Two groups of people in Lehi stream take hold of the iron rod. Both of them press forward through the mist of darkness. Both come out the other side. Both reach the tree, and both eat the fruit. Only one group is still standing there at the end of the chapter. You might expect the difference to be something dramatic, that one group failed and one succeeded, but that's not what happens. The difference is in their posture. And Nephi describes it in 3 words that sit in a verse he was actively cutting down for space. He kept those 3 words anyway. Welcome to the Coming Closer podcast. Getting to the tree means holding the rod and letting go of what won't fit through the gate. Staying there means letting go of whatever still wants the world's approval. Those are 2 different acts of surrender, and I think most of us are a good deal better at the first one. Today's episode is called Fell Down in Worship or Fell Away in Shame. 2 groups at the tree and only one stayed. I'm James, and if you were with us last week out in the pumpkin patch, this is the other half of that story. Last week, we talked about how to stay connected to Christ. Today, 2 groups of people who reached him, and only one of them stayed. We're going to walk the whole path with them and find that the difference comes down to a single missing clause. Let's start with everything these 2 groups have in common. In 1 Nephi chapter 8, Lehi describes a dream. There's a river, there's a rod of iron running alongside a path, and a mist of darkness that rises up thick enough to lose people in. At the end of that path, there's a tree with fruit sweeter than anything he has ever tasted, and whiter than anything he has ever seen. And before we go any further, it's worth knowing what is at stake here. What does the tree with the whiter than anything fruit represent? Later, Nephi receives his own version of this vision. He asks what the tree means, and the answer he gets is this: "It is the love of God, which sheddeth itself abroad in the hearts of the children of men. Wherefore, it is the most desirable above all things." The most desirable of all things. That is what is at stake here. That is what both of these groups reach and what both of them receive. There are several groups of people in this dream. One group never finds the path at all. Another group gets into the path, gets caught in the mist, and wanders off and is lost. They never reach the tree. But there are 2 groups I want us to look at carefully because they're the ones that trouble me. The first group catches hold of the end of the iron rod. They press forward through the mist of darkness, through it all the way through, clinging to that rod, and they come forth and partake of the fruit of the tree. The second group catches hold of the end of the iron rod. They press their way forward, continually holding fast to that rod, until they come forth and fall down and partake of the fruit of the tree. Read those slowly and notice what is identical. Same rod, same mist, same journey, and same tree, same fruit. And here's the part we're slowing down for. Both groups partake. The text says so plainly in both places. They both ate the fruit. They both experienced the joy of God's love for them. And that matters because you may have heard this passage taught as though one group only sampled the fruit, while the other truly received it. That the real difference is tasting versus partaking. The text doesn't quite support that. 2 verses later, describing the very same group that clung to the rod, Nephi says, "After they had partaken of the fruit of the tree," partaken, same word. So whatever separates these 2 groups, it isn't that one of them failed to arrive, and it isn't that one of them failed to eat. Both of them made it, and only one of them stayed. So if it isn't the arriving and it isn't the eating, what is it? The first difference is in their grip, how they hold on to the rod. One group is described as clinging to the rod of iron. The other is described as continually holding fast to it. Two different phrases deliberately chosen for two different groups. Now, if you were with us last week, you'll remember I spent a while talking about pumpkin vines, about those little tendrils that curl around a trellis and grip it, the ones built to hold fast. And I mentioned then that Scripture uses that same phrase for a whole group of people at this tree. This is that group. This is where I owe you the rest of this story. Elder David A. Bednar gave a BYU devotional on exactly this difference back in 2007. His reading has stayed with me. He said that clinging to the rod of iron suggests only occasional bursts of study or irregular dipping rather than consistent ongoing immersion in the Word of God. Think about what that clinging actually looks like. You cling to something when you're afraid of falling. It's a grip born of alarm, reactive, white-knuckled. It tightens the moment you get scared, and it loosens the moment you aren't. Clinging is what you do in an emergency. Holding fast is a different thing entirely. Holding fast is a decision you made before the emergency arrived. The rod isn't your safety net, it's your route. You're not gripping it because you're afraid of falling. You're gripping it because it's going somewhere, and so are you. And notice the word sitting in front of it, continually, not fiercely and not desperately, continually. The distinguishing feature isn't the strength of the grip, it's the duration of it. There's one more thread here worth pulling. A few weeks back, we talked about the straight gate. Straight, spelled S-T-R-A-I-T, meaning narrow, tight, constricted. And we landed on what I called the two hands of discipleship. The open hand that drops the baggage, and the closed hand that grips the rod. Well, here's the rod. Same rod. And what this dream adds is the question that episode never asks. What kind of grip is the closed hand using? Because both of those groups had a hand on it. Both of them were holding something. One of them was holding on. The other was holding fast. Now, here's the thing I actually came to tell you. Let me read you those two descriptions one more time. And this time listen for what changes, not the grip. We've done the grip. Listen to what happens when they arrive. The first group, they did come forth and partake of the fruit of the tree. The second group, they came forth and fell down and partook of the fruit of the tree. Came forth and partake, came forth and fell down and partook. 3 words, fell down and. That is the entire difference in the arrival. One group walked up to the tree and ate. The other group walked up to the tree, went to their knees, and then ate. Now I want to show you something about those 3 words that raises the stakes considerably. Look at the verse immediately before that second description. Nephi writes, "And now I, Nephi, do not speak all the words of my father." And the very next verse opens, "But to be short in writing," Nephi is cutting. He's telling us straight out that he's abridging his father's account, that there was more and he isn't including it, that he is compressing to save room. He's editing at exactly this verse. And in the middle of cutting, he kept, fell down. Think about what that means. When you trim something for length, what survives is what you judged worth the space. Nephi had limited room on metal plates. He was actively deciding what to leave out, and the one detail he preserved, while summarizing his father's dream, is the one detail that separates the two groups. That isn't incidental phrasing. That's a choice. So what does fall down at that tree actually mean? Nephi answers that himself 3 chapters later, when he receives his own vision of what his father saw. He is shown the Son of God going forth among the children of men, and he says, "I saw many fall down at his feet and worship him." fall down at his feet and worship him. The tree is Christ. That is what the entire vision has been building toward. So when a group of people come to that tree and fall down before they eat, they are not stumbling and they are not being polite. They are worshiping. They came all that way. They arrived at the source of everything. And the first thing they did was go to their knees. The other group came the distance, reached the same tree, and ate standing up. So, two groups, same rod, same mist, same tree, same fruit, and both of them partaking. One difference in the grip, clinging versus continually holding fast, and one difference at the arrival, 3 words, fell down and, kept by the editor who was cutting for space. Now let's talk about what happens next. Here's where this stops being an interesting textual observation and starts to sting a little because of what happens to that first group. They reached the tree and they partook, and then, this is Nephi's own account, they did cast their eyes about as if they were ashamed. And a few verses later, after they had tasted of the fruit, they were ashamed because of those that were scoffing at them, and they fell away into forbidden paths and were lost. Let's hold on to that word, tasted. I want to be really careful here because it would be easy to hear tasted as a put-down, as though these people never really got it. They just nibbled, they sampled, and moved on. That reading is available, but I don't think it's right. Look at how the word gets used elsewhere. Lehi describes his own experience with this exact fruit. He says, I did go forth and partake of the fruit thereof, and I beheld it was most sweet, above all that I ever before tasted. That's Lehi, the man who ate and was filled with joy, and immediately started calling for his family. He uses both words, partake and taste, in a single sentence about himself. And Alma, teaching about faith as a seed, asks his listeners, after you have tasted this light, is your knowledge perfect? His whole argument in that chapter is that the tasting is real. It's good. It is the genuine article, just not yet complete. So when Nephi says this group tasted the fruit, he is not calling them shallow. He is telling us they knew. They knew what the love of God tastes like, not by description and not by report, not because somebody told them about it, but by direct experience in their own mouths. They had passed through the darkness to get it. They had it, and still they walked away. I find that far more sobering than the alternative. It would be easy if this was a story about people who never really got it. People who faked their way to the tree and were found out. That's a comfortable story because most of us can locate ourselves safely outside of it. That isn't this story. This is a story about people who made the journey, held the rod, came through the mist, reached Christ, tasted the joy of righteous living, and lost it anyway. Which means the experience itself, however real, is not what holds a person at the tree. Sit with that a second. If having a genuine spiritual experience were sufficient, this group would have stayed. They had one, and it wasn't enough. Something else holds you, and the text has already shown us what it is. We walked right past it about 3 minutes ago. Let's go back and watch what actually happens because the sequence matters. They partook, and then Nephi says they did cast their eyes about. They looked up. They looked around. Now here is something I find genuinely striking. Lehi did the same thing. After Lehi ate, he says, it filled my soul with exceedingly great joy. Wherefore I began to be desirous that my family should partake of it also. He ate, and then he looked outward too. He looked for his wife, and he looked for his sons. 2 people received the same fruit. Both of them immediately look up and look outward. One is looking for his family. The other is looking to see who's watching. Same movement, but opposite direction. And what the second group found when they looked was a great and spacious building full of people pointing and laughing at them. And Nephi says they were ashamed because of those that were scoffing at them, and they fell away. It's worth knowing what the building is because Nephi talks about that too. He's told it is the world and the wisdom thereof. A verse later, the pride of the world. Not a random crowd, not people who happen to be unkind that day. The pride of the world and the world's own wisdom, housed in something large and impressive. In Lehi's own words, stood as it were in the air, high above the earth. Elder Lynn G. Robbins gave a talk in 2014 that puts a name on this. He said that in Lehi's dream, this fear was triggered by the finger of scorn pointed from the great and spacious building, causing many to forget which way they faced and to leave the tree ashamed. Forget what they faced. That's the whole thing in 5 words. Now, I want to be honest with you about something because I think it really matters. The text tells us these people were ashamed. It does not tell us why the mocking had that much power over them. That part isn't stated anywhere. So what I'm about to say next is reading mine, not Nephi's. Take it for exactly what it's worth. I don't think shame is the real problem. I think shame is the symptom. Scorn only gets a grip on you if you still want something from the people doing the scorning. If that building genuinely meant nothing to them, the laughing would have been noise. And notice that Nephi's own interpretation leans this direction. He doesn't say the building is cruelty. He says it is the pride of the world and the world's wisdom, which means being wounded by what comes out of it is itself a sign that some part of you still values what it's selling. Elder Robbins says something in that same talk that I think supports this. Trying to please others before pleasing God, he says, is inverting the first and second great commandments. That is not a feeling problem. It's a priority problem. And here is the contrast. Lehi faces the same scorn, the same building, the same pointed fingers. He says so directly. They did point the finger of scorn at him and at those who were partaking of the fruit. And then he adds 5 words that Elder Bednar builds an entire general conference talk around. But we heeded them not. Not, it didn't hurt. Not, I was strong enough to take it. We heeded them not. We didn't give it our attention. It wasn't ours to weigh. So let's put it together. Arriving didn't hold them. They arrived. Holding the rod didn't hold them. Not the way they held it. They had a hand on it the entire way through the mist. Partaking didn't hold them. The text says they partook twice. And tasting real joy didn't hold them. They tasted. They knew. Every single thing you might reasonably expect to be sufficient, they had. And they still left. So what did the other group have? 3 words. They fell down. Before they ate, they went to their knees. I think that's the whole answer. And I think it's a simpler answer than we usually want it to be. Because kneeling settles a question. When you go to your knees in front of something, you have already decided what it is and what you are in relation to it. That decision gets made before anyone starts laughing. So when the mocking comes, and in this dream, the mocking always comes, it arrives at someone who has already answered the question of whose opinion counts here. The other group hadn't answered it yet. They had done everything else. They just hadn't knelt. So when the laughter started, the question was still open. And a question that's still open will get answered by whoever is loudest. That's why worship isn't decoration on top of discipleship. It's structural. It is what makes a person immovable when the scorn arrives, because it's settled the ranking beforehand. And I'll say the honest part too. It isn't a one-time act. The people who fell down had also been continually holding fast. Those 2 things sit in the same verse. describing the same people. The grip that lasts and the knees that bend belong to the same person. I keep coming back to those three words, not because they're clever, but because they ask me a question I can't dodge. When something sacred comes to me, a real answer to a prayer, a quiet moment in the temple, a confirmation I wasn't expecting, what do I do in the next 10 seconds? Do I kneel first, or do I take it standing up and then look around to see who noticed? I know which one I'd like to be true about me. I'm not always sure that it is. But I do believe this, and I'll say it plainly. The tree in that dream is Christ. The fruit is his love. And I know from my own life that he gives it to people who arrive with all kinds of grips on that rod, including mine. What I've come to understand is that going to your knees and worshiping him isn't the price of the fruit. It's what makes you want to keep it. Now that we know more about what actually holds us at the tree, what can we do to come closer to Christ? I think I might pay a little more attention this week to that 10-second window, the moment right after something good comes, and notice which way I turn, toward him or toward the room. Maybe you'd like to do that too, or let me know if you think of something even better. Whatever you receive this week, and I hope you receive something, go to your knees with it before you go looking for who noticed. The laughing will come. It always does. But it lands very differently on someone who has already knelt. This has been the Coming Closer podcast. I'm James, and we'll see you next time.